I'm representing classic jazz
Okay.
at Lincoln Library, otherwise known as CJAL.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And what we thought we would do is see what we can do about preserving and finding out what might preserve jazz. Okay, so some of the questions that I thought, what do you look for and what got you interested in jazz?
I was probably 5 years old. My grandfather played the turn of the century cornet band, so there was always music on in my house, swing stuff. And his stuff went back to the marches of Sousa. And then somehow I heard a Firehouse 5+2 record and said, oh, it's a great sound, I really like it. So I decided, I guess at a very young age, that I liked jazz, the earlier stuff. And then as I got older, I got into the swing and a little bit more progressive. So I always had a feeling.
What first instrument did you start with?
First instrument was B-flat alto horn. And then trumpet came about, I think I was 9, I started taking lessons. So I was 15, maybe 16. But I started working professionally when I was 14. So I was already getting gigs. My teacher wanted me to be a symphony musician. He was very upset that I didn't. I was supposed to go to the conservatory and all that. He was a wonderful teacher. I didn't take that away from him. He said, what are you doing? Jazz crap. Not music. Because he couldn't do it. He didn't understand it.
Yeah. You obviously hear, because
that's what jazz is ears. It's all ears.
Totally ears,
yeah.
and you know
yeah.
all the chords. And
yeah, and even if you don't, I mean, Jimmy Mazzy's a prime example. Self-taught, he plays the banjo wrong, according to a tenor player who teaches. He plays it. Most players, when they play the banjo, play it like this. Jimmy plays it like this. He taught himself to do that, so he gets these wonderful voicings on chords that nobody else can do. Most people couldn't contort their hand that way.
So then, what was your third instrument?
I picked up guitar in high school because everybody was playing guitar back in the 60s. And taught myself to play that, which is stupid. You need a teacher to at least get you going. So I do a lot of things around too. But
the audience doesn't know it.
I kind of cover up sometimes.
And a lot of them may not know, but no, it sounds good. People would know if it didn't sound good.
Right,
so banjo after that?
Yeah, banjo came along in the 70s. I was playing with a kind of a father's mustache type of band, and the banjo player was in and out. I mean, sometimes he'd show up, sometimes he wouldn't, so I was playing more banjo than probably more than I do now. I don't play a lot of banjo.
You?
I can, but I don't. I used to have one and I sold it. I think I swapped it for trumpet.
What's remarkable is they're all different. They're so different.
I think that's why I did it. I wanted to play guitar. I always loved Reinhardt's playing. You know, that's like my god. If I ever get to that point, which, you have to practice 8 hours a day to get there. Now you have 8 hours a day. Would I ever get to that point?
You got to lose a couple of fingers too.
Yeah, you got to get these two fused like that.
But then you went into all kinds of other things too. You play other instruments.
I played reeds for a while, and I find that the reeds are bothering my lower lip.
Because the embouchures are different on everything you've been blowing so
The world
far.
does not need another bad soprano sax player. So when I played at the old Sticky Wicket, Noel Koleski used to play the second soprano. He and I would do a couple of novelty things together.
I saw you with a little trombone there one time.
Soprano trombone, or actually it's the slide trumpet.
Is it? No, is that what that is?
I almost brought that today because I thought Lee wasn't going to be here. No, you got enough stuff to carry. Yeah, that's different. Louis actually did play one. It's a big argument. There's a famous photo of him in the Fate Marable band, and he's down on one knee with a slide trumpet. And the historian said he never played that. I was at the Wicket one night. A man who was in at least his late 80s. He said he was in his 80s, and he looked like he was the oldest. He said the only time he'd ever seen a slide trumpet being played was Louis Armstrong in 1931 or 2 in New York. So he did play it. He said, oh yeah, he played it real well. No surprise. So I believe it. I had no reason not to. So I think he probably did play it.
Yeah. So where were you able to even find all these instruments? Because you don't walk into a music store and pick up one of those.
I've been collecting cornets since I was about 16. So I've got a fairly decent collection of. They're not valuable in the world. Of antique, vintage. junk shops. I used to, every flea market in New England I was at. And in those days you could find them. The slide trumpet was modern, made by the Degg company, probably in the 70s or 80s. I had to have one. I always wanted one, so I got one. I played with it for a while. It was very hard to play with.
What do you look for in other musicians that you play with, particularly?
People who enjoy what they're doing to a point that it's infectious. I don't enjoy playing with jazz musicians that don't seem to want to be doing it. If you can't smile at a good solo and encourage, that's why it's such a great band. It's all support.
Yeah. I've seen you down years ago at Connecticut Jazz, and all your pickup bands and things like the pickup groups, you also enthuse the group.
I love to play.
Yeah, but it's infectious.
Yeah. And
it's infectious.
Just, I was very lucky when I was a kid. I grew up with a bunch of older musicians, and they were really good. And one in particular was a sax player. He played with Ellington.
Where was this, Scotty?
This is in Newburyport. We had a jam session every Friday night since I think I started when I was about 13 or 14. It was in an old garage, an old car garage. Great piano player. Some of the old swing musicians that still live in the area used to come in and sit in, just a piano. And Ike Roberts was a sax player, and said, when you go to play, he said, you got to give 100% every time. And this guy gave 150%. He was incredible. But I was lucky enough to work with him in later years. And he'd walk out on stage, and it was electric. He didn't have to say a word. The way he walked out, the presence that the man had, and then he picked his alto up and just destroyed everybody. But that was the background. There was a lot of jazz when I was a kid. A lot of it live.
There's some, and it pains me that there aren't clubs that cater to younger people that don't have jazz, and have more jazz in it.
I don't know the answer to the every generation had its music. I mean, we know that. The great classical music of the past is still being listened to by young people. Not as many. Some jazz is being listened to by younger people, but even fewer. So it's like when jazz was coming up in the 20s, the parents of the kids that were listening to it were horrified by it. It was, just barbaric music. They didn't like it because they grew up with Viennese waltzes and more classical music and even ragtime. So the generation that came up, my generation, really wasn't interested in jazz. Not to speak of. There were a few of us that played in the same age, but most of us played with older people.
But the schools are the one place that I've noticed. Most of them have a jazz band.
And good ones.
Yeah.
Some of the local jazz bands are incredible. The kids in Connecticut are wonderful. They're very good. It seems that they get maybe into college and play at a good level for jazz, and then there's no place to take it.
That's
the problem.
The
So you might get a
problem.
wonderfully talented youngster. There's a girl that plays trombone in Connecticut who's 17 now, and has got ears like a trap. She's got a beautiful sound. She came and sat in with Charlie Borman. I mean, he's one of the gods of trombone, and she held her own really well. I was so proud of her. And she played a whole set with us and played stuff she'd never heard before. Take choruses. We're getting the rap.
Well, that's part one of this series of interviews with Scotty. In part two, we may pick up some of his adventures with Reggie Phillips in Concord in the early days. And I know you can.
Yep.
But we will reserve that for part two of Eve's Evolutions.
Oh, my evolution.